The way this is going to work this evening is that Terry is going to make some remarks that may last about a half hour or so, kind of get us warmed up about what he does and about the things that we probably need to think about or could think about for Blowing Rock in our community. And then we will have a panel consisting of Susie Green, who is a community leader and on the planning board, Keith Tester, a community leader, business person, and former town commissioner, and Alice Race, who is a business person in Blowing Rock and the vice chair of the Appalachian State University Board of Trustees. So a great panel and an extraordinary speaker with a national and international reputation. It's my pleasure to introduce Terry Shook.
First, before I begin, a little nostalgia and a little perspective at the same time.
We paved paradise, put up a parking lot. With a pink hotel, a boutique and a swinging hot spot. Don't it always seem to go? You don't know what you've got till it's gone. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. And we took all the trees, put them in a tree museum. And they charged all the people $1.50 just to see them. I said, don't it always seem to go? You don't know what you've got till it's gone. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. Don't it always seem to go? You don't know what you've got till it's gone. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot.
I guess that has particular poignancy in Blowing Rock with that new road being built. I had the pleasure of experiencing on the way in. Let me give you a little bit about me, because I believe it's important. Society is about people. Let me tell you a little bit about me personally. I grew up in the small town of Gastonia, North Carolina. I was a sickly kid. I didn't play sports. I had asthma. And but my dad was a contractor, and his office was in downtown Gastonia. And back in those days, it was a beautiful little main street. So I spent my afternoons hanging out on that main street. I knew every toy store on that main street. I was in every Five and Dime. I knew people in the soda shop. I knew people in the newsstands, and they knew me, and they knew my dad. So when I got to be 14 years old, I was looking at the books in the back of the newsstand I should be looking at that called my dad. That's what a community is about, right? And it was a great town, like most towns that we think of, right? It was literally paved, of course, but it was a place where people gathered for the great times in their lives, the times when they celebrated, the times in sadness, as no doubt happened at many points in history, as we know we encounter those as a culture. So the truth is that we love our paved areas. Now, one thing that happened in my little town is that they decided to bury the railroad tracks, which that and the shopping malls effectively killed that downtown. It looked very much like that last photo in that little ditty that I played. Interestingly though, so I grew up with this great love of urban areas, of the places you can go, and we know them, we go to them all over the country. But my dad also, when I was very young, moved us to another beautiful place. This is Prowler's Mountain. That could be me on that rock, it's not, but I stood there on that very rock many times. In fact, our house is that, it's amazing, is that clutch that's over to the right-hand side of that grove of trees. I would walk up, and this was my backyard, essentially, growing up. So I had a chance to experience great urbanism and great wilderness areas at the same time. Now, I have spent my career, actually, also I should mention this, the place near Highlands. This is the family home. Been in the family since 1838. It was homesteaded land, and I spent also summers and other parts up at the old family home place at the top of a mountain. So I had real wilderness experiences in my life, along with the ones of the city. So my career has been about, obviously, I've paved some paradises. I hope I've done better than most. This is Birkdale Village. This is one of the kind of places we do. So my career has been about building these great convivial gathering places in the suburbs, and also, as was mentioned, inside cities. I've been very much a part of the Renaissance in downtown Charlotte and South End. But I've also been in other places. I've also had a chance to know Charleston. One of my very first projects as an architect was in downtown Charleston. I did the Harris Teeter store on East Bay Street. Many of you probably have seen that. And I tracked my whole career through Joe Riley's mayoral term. Got to know Joe in his first term, remained a friend to this day. I'll say more about Joe Riley later, and about Charleston. So we know what these great places are. They gather us together. Now, interestingly, when you go to Charleston, there's very little wilderness, of course. You look out on it, you look out onto the oceans, and most of the wilderness that you experience in Charleston is on a plate in terms of seafood. But still, we know what these gathering places are like. But we know what nature means to us. It means, I don't know if anybody's familiar with this book. It's called the biophilia hypothesis. Edward L. Wilson, the great Harvard entomologist, was co-author with Stephen Keller. And basically what the premise they say, it's interesting about human beings. Civilization has only been with us for like 4,000, 5,000 years. I guess Göbekli Tepe and Turkey has pushed it back to maybe 8,000, 9,000 years. But still, we are very much part of nature. Human beings for 40 to 50,000 years, when we first sometime gained real consciousness, we're part of nature. It's hard to take us out of nature in terms of what's in our brains and our genes, right? We crave our natural areas. That's why you see a place like New York, which has great urban areas. It wouldn't be tenable unless it had Central Park. Well, Central Park is great. We've all been there, I'm sure. The city parks are great, of course, but they're not a wilderness. They don't make that connection that we're looking for. You are next to legitimate wilderness in Blowing Rock. I mean, the interesting thing about the Blue Ridge Parkway, of course, it is, except for 2 years, I think, since it opened, it's been the most heavily visited natural, park in the United States, and adjacent to the Great Smokies. You put them together, it's an amazing thing to know we're this close. When you live like I do in Charlotte, you're this close to something like this. And we know also that there's a reason for this, is that we're within driving distance of all the great metropolitan areas of the East Coast. That's what makes it so. All of these people who live in these cities and the towns that are surround them seek that, like the Callants would say, that compensating balance. They love their urbanism, but they have to have, just as the biophilia hypothesis tells us, we have to have this connection with nature. And we know we're only going to see more people. The mountains of North Carolina, or the Appalachian Mountains in general, and this area in particular, as you look at those red dots on that map in terms of where we're growing in America, you look at all those cities along the East Coast, and you think about how close they are to this area of Blue Ridge Parkway, there's going to be all kinds of development pressure and visitorship pressure. We also know a couple of things. We also know that boomers, people look like me and people like most of the people in this room, and then the millennials, but a particular branch of the millennials, we call them Henrys. High income, not rich yet. that we know that the boomers and the millennials really are going to seek out the kinds of places. They love their urbanism and they love their nature, and we are spoiled because we want both at the same time. Think about that. Sounds contradictory, but we want both. We are impatient. We want both at the same time. Now, interesting about the Henrys, they invented and embraced the sharing economy. This is the generation that has no problem with sharing a car through Uber, which I do all the time, by the way. Now, every city I go to, I don't use a taxi cab anymore. I'm an Uber fanatic. And they also invented Airbnb. I must admit, I haven't quite gotten there. But many of them do, and they relish what it means. These things are incredible disruptive technologies that are going to impact our culture in the very near future in a profound way. Well, so the question is, those of you who are, who love Blowing Rock or residents of Blowing Rock, what kind of experiences will these future generations want? Not in relation to society in general, but also for Blowing Rock. Well, when you think about that dichotomy of wanting both urbanism and wilderness at the same time, history gives us some lessons. This is a coastal village along the Amalfi Coast of the Mediterranean. Think about this. I mean, this is, I always say, I'm an old sailor. I've done 6 Annapolis, Bermuda ocean races, and I will tell you, the ultimate wilderness is an ocean when you're 300 miles offshore. I can tell you that. So think about it. So this is the ultimate urbanism, where people are clinging to cliffs and living close by, cheek to jowl with this wilderness called the Mediterranean Sea, right? And it's just absolutely intoxicating when you're there. But we also have examples that we built. I know that many of you may have been to Beaver Creek, skied Beaver Creek. I did when I was younger. Don't ski anymore. But it was an amazing experience to come out of the Rocky Mountains and ski right into a village, kick your skis off, and walk 15 feet for a glass of wine or a cocktail and have a great meal. What a thing. It's like going through this door. Like you open a door and all of a sudden you're in a room and you open that door and you're looking down at a waterfall. I mean, it has that kind of impact to you, right? Those are the kinds of experiences that get our endorphins flowing that we seek as sentient human beings that experience about everything else that there is experience in life. We go for these things. We own everything we want, really, so it's like experiences are what's left. So let me tell you some little stories and explorations along the way about this. We've been involved in designing new places that leverage this whole idea. A few years ago, we were hired by Maui Land and Pineapple to look at their 25,000 acres. Think about that, 25,000 acres owned by one company. And you may know it not by Maui Land and Pineapple, but you may know the resort, Kapalua. Has anybody in the room been to Kapalua? Okay, a couple of people there. Well, the interesting thing about Kapalua, it's on the windward side of the island. And most people who want to go and experience Hawaii want to go to there on the leeward side of the island, more the Myrtle Beach kind of thing. Big sandy beaches, the wind doesn't blow, all those kinds of things. Well, Kapalua has rocky beaches and the wind blows all the time. It's either blowing the trade winds or it's blowing the conga winds. They're 180 degrees opposite one another. And at the time, Kapalua was owned by Steve Case, AOL, and Marriott. So we go and visit Kapalua. And I'm going to back up to this. Let me just hold it there. So we go and visit Kapalua, and what we noticed was that here's a place where people come to Hawaii with this image of what paradise means. All of us have this image of paradise, Hawaiian paradise. I mean, it's Michener's novels or it's old 1950 movies, right? Could even be something as prosaic as Hawaii 5-0 back in the day. But we have these images of what paradise means in the context of Hawaii. So I got there naively thinking the same thing. And what I encountered was a place that looked like it could have been dropped out of the east coast of America, any suburban setting. I had a road that went all through it that had nothing but speed bumps. I had no sidewalks, so people were trying to walk on these roads from all over the world with no sidewalks and dodging cars as they dodged speed bumps. You will notice, by the way, and we all identify paradise with pineapples, right? The truth is that was imported into Hawaii. We won't tell that secret to you. It's not like a native thing, but we still identify the pineapple, right? But the amazing thing was, see that little butterfly? I'll tell you about this chart in a minute. And that little red book as well. But their logo was a butterfly. So we started asking around when we first started working, where are the butterflies? And the person who ran the golf operation said, oh, we had some golfers that complained about that a few years ago, so we brought in some people to eradicate all the butterflies. Okay? Still their logo. So we're perplexed by that. I'll tell you a little more about that in a minute. So the main thing we did, we were hired to help them understand, okay, you're clearly out of bounds, to use a golf terminology. technology, and you're clueless in terms of the asset you have. Because you've lost touch. Just like that song, you've treated paradise like some abstract thing. You've lost touch with why people come all over the world in jet airplanes to come to Hawaii and Maui and Kapalua in particular. So we started up, we wrote them a little book. Yes, it looks like Mao's little red book that was tongue firmly butted in cheek for a reason. Because Dick Cole, who ran Maui, was a brilliant man, and he wanted to make change. He wanted to affect change. So we wrote this little book, the Kapalua's Owner Manual. So everybody, no matter who was there, I don't care if you emptied the trash, if you were David Cole, everybody knew what the new paradigm would be for Kapalua. And we wrote a brand chart. We do, out of my Los Angeles office, we do lots of work for the consumer products industry. You name it, Harley Davidson to Kraft Foods, we've done everything from Oscar Mayer to Oreos, everything Kraft, macaroni and cheese, everything in between. Lots of others. And basically, it's like the old saying that's described to Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland. It wasn't really that. It was described to him, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. Well, that's what a brand roadmap is. So you don't just take any road so you get lost. So we did basically, their whole new brand purpose was restoration. Restoration of their place, physical place, their whole purpose, and restoration, quite frankly, of the relationship with Native Hawaiians. I'll show you a little bit more why that was important. So all these things were important and embodied in that little red book. And it was the kind of thing that anyone could understand. You don't want to write too many words, but you need to write enough words. Words are important. Like one of them, our purpose is restoration. We will restore the quality, dignity, pride, culture, heritage, meaning, and soul of this special place. Right? You know, we said bring back the butterflies and their habitats. It's very important. Celebrate the farming. People want to know about these pineapples. They want to know it. They want to smell. I'll tell you what, this stuff we eat on the East Coast they send to us is swill. If you've never had an honest to goodness fresh pineapple out of the field, you do not know what it tastes like. Respectfully acknowledge the Native Hawaiian culture. They had not done that in the most egregious ways. So what did that mean? This was a place at Kapalua. I don't have a pointer, I apologize, but if you see the little map on the corner, we put a village in there, and you can see in the bigger diagram, basically what we said. There was one long road that ran straight from that main road, going to the right, curves up to the left, all the way down to the water. That was a road with the speed bumps. So it was one long straight road for about a half a mile. You know, it's like a dragster, down a hill, by the way. We said, look, we're going to interrupt that with a brand new village. We're going to bring the pineapple from down. I mean, they own all the way up to a volcano. It's what's called in Native Hawaiian terms, ahupuaha. I'm so proud that I still remember that word. But, you can say it, pronounce it. But it went always on top of the volcano into the ocean. So we said, let's have a place, a new village, interrupt that road. Let's bring the pineapple right down into the village. Let's establish through native plantings the butterfly meadow. Let's respect the ancient Hawaiian burial ground. By the way, if you go stay at the Ritz-Carlton there, half of the Ritz-Carlton was built on a native Hawaiian burial ground. Oops. They had to be made aware of that too late. Think about that. So basically what we said was, look, let's do a village. And the bad thing was all the wind blows there, heavy winds. We said, okay, here's your new tagline, nature's on our side. We're going for, we don't care. If you want to go and be on the beach, like Myrtle Beach, then you're not our customer anyway. But if you're a customer who's active and outdoors and you want to actually have a chance of riding a bike or walking up the top of that volcano, or if you want to go around the ocean and see whales, or you want to learn how to surf between the rocks, all these kinds of things, you come to Kapalua. We want to be the Nairobi for Maui, that if you're an outdoors person, you come to our village because we're going to serve you. And if you want to just sit with the beach balls on the beach, that's somebody else's customer. You're not ours. So we designed a place to do just that. It's so funny about the butterflies. we were perplexed that anybody could eradicate butterflies. So if you'll notice in between, you guys are golfers in the room, you'll see to the left, it looks like there's a forest in between two golf courses, hole 1 and hole 18. They all came together right there where we were going to do our village. We went down in that place, walked around. They never went down there because they didn't care. It was more than rough, it was very rough. And guess what? It was full of butterflies. And we went back, and the new golf course guy said, you know what? We actually think these fairways are a little too wide anyway. We've taken, this is where the Mercedes Championship was. We want to make it harder. We're going to give you back some more land for butterflies. And the great thing about a butterfly, it hatches out on a 7-day cycle. And everybody gets bored 3 days, 4 days into that. You don't like your mother-in-law, you know, the kids are yelling, that kind of stuff. So we set up a butterfly house with a hatchery. That was the idea. And the butterflies would hatch out, you know, like on Wednesday. Every Wednesday, release them back into the wild. We also said, they said, well, what are you going to do about the winds? I got an answer to that. The winds blow, see that long building right there on the lower level of that village plan? There's a long building. One side down to this way, it looks out across the Pacific Ocean, across the golf courses, beautiful views. And the other way is part of the village. If the Kona winds are blowing, we create a wind shadow of that building. You sit on one side of the building and you can eat outside. They said during winds, the plates would go on tables like frisbees. You know, so you probably kill somebody, much less you couldn't eat. So I understand. The building makes a wind shadow. The wind's blowing Kona winds. You know, watch out. Trade winds, sit on the other side. So you get a way to let nature be part of the form of the place. It's part of the ritual. You eat outside based upon which way the wind is blowing. Kind of like old Andy Warhol said, you didn't need a weatherman to tell you which way the wind is blowing. Here you don't need a weatherman either, just know where they're serving your entree. And we established a market square. So when people came in, this is where everyone came in to get their room. And we had it set up where all the fresh pineapple fields came right down to the village. Came right down to the village. So everybody is, while some person's schlepping off to go get the key, everybody else is being served fresh pineapple by someone that's knocking the top off right there. And there's the terrace dining I'm talking about. See, this whole thing was about mending memories about what a paradise could be and about Kapalua. So everyone around the world went back when they told their friends about their great vacation, how they just had an experience that couldn't be replicated anywhere. Their friends and neighbors would all come back to Kapalua. That was the idea. Well, here's the problem. These are just some of the images. The problem was change is hard. Change and commitment is very hard. David Cole left the company, and the other guy came on and said, not invented here. That happens in companies all the time. So what I'm showing you did not happen. Kapalua still suffers under many. Some of the things they adopted, they're not the complete package. But they still suffer under the inertia from a bad narrative. Think about all those things in your place. Think about Blowing Rock. I'm not here to tell you what you should be doing in Blowing Rock. If anybody sitting in the audience and think, now I'm going to get 10 points in 10 places and say, do this like a cookbook, you're wrong. It's hard work. I don't begin to know Blowing Rock well enough for that. But I can give you some pointers about what you should be doing, I think, so that perhaps 25 years from now, 50 years from now, you have a very purposeful place in the onslaught of all this population growth that I have on the East Coast, that this place that all of you love now, that neither inertia keeps you from doing the absolute best thing, nor will rapid growth kill what's left. So here's two things to think about. First off, really take stock of the great things that you want to take into the future and those that you don't. Think about that story about Kapalua. There were all kinds of spurious things there somebody said they could have just really focused on. Everything from, where you get the ice cream cone, all sorts of things like that. People could fight over the most silly things, right? You can do these kinds of things. But you die a death of 1,000 cuts. Or you cannot grow because you didn't get the right nourishment for the things that needed it. This is important work. This is important civic work. And I will tell you, I don't want to offend people in my profession, architects and planners can be the worst usually to lead these kinds of things. Because the problem is we live life between our own ears a lot of times. We're guilty of that. Mea culpa. We had to break out of it in our own practice to try to get beyond that. But this is important civic work to do. Think about it. Think about the great things here. Think about the Main Street that you have. Think about the experiences people tell you. The great thing about social media these days is that, and particularly it's used by those Henrys, they are not shy about telling you about what's good and about what is absolutely awful, right? You know instantaneously whether you run an establishment, whether you're a city, a place, doesn't matter. You know. Listen to those things, read those things, right? Same is true with businesses. Everybody has a competitor. If you have a hotel or a restaurant, think about it. There are many options for people to go to now. And there are many ways to find out about these things. The buyer is fickle. They don't have to come to Boone Rock. They don't have to come to the mountains of North Carolina. I will tell you an observation I have. I've done a lot of work in Virginia, and I will tell you what. Our neighbors to the north do a heck of a better job in terms of taking care of the environment that borders roads. And for some reason, the development, when they're even the more prosaic development, is not as odious as we have to live with. I don't know why that is. I have no idea. I spent a lot of time doing work in Lexington, Virginia, and other places around. It is vastly different, and I've always wondered as a North Carolinian why. And I can't put my finger on it. Maybe Cameron Morrison's good roads back in the 20s wasn't a good idea. But I mean, I'm not sure what happened, but it's something to ponder. In landscapes, just like our song, people in the end are coming because of the natural landscapes. They can go for great environments like the Main Street and great lodging and restaurants in the Charlestons of the world, the Savannahs, the Bostons, and they can go to places and get that. They want both. If you don't take care of the latter part and let it be as a wilderness, not like a captured backyard or trees in a tree museum, you run the risk of killing the goose that laid the golden egg. You risk, frankly, becoming irrelevant or even worse. Let's look at Charleston. Tell you a little story about Charleston again. First project was there. Joe Riley's a friend of mine, known him all my life. He's one of the most amazing human beings that I know. And the thing about Joe is, think about Charleston. In I started in 1978 when I got to know Joe, 79, I guess it was. And Charleston was basically a third-tier southern city, a backwater place. I mean, it had history. It had people living in those old mansions. And as we in Charlotte would always say, that they're like the Chinese, they eat rice and worship their ancestors. They didn't eat potatoes. But they fiercely took charge of that place and kept it where it was, right? But it really wasn't a destination unless you really were a history buff or you really were into shabby chic. But that Joe Riley, he knew how to keep the things that were important, right? And to build an international destination. I mean, Spoleto, my goodness gracious, that's an international festival. I'm sure many of you go, but it's very difficult to get a ticket. Nowadays, unless you're legacy, it's almost extremely difficult. And I've always said what Joe Riley wasn't a mayor. What we have in the brand world, he was a chief brand officer. Because he was the taste master. I remember one time being in Joe Riley's office with a client. And he was as hot as could be. Someone had wanted to come into Charleston and take these kind of cute little golf carts and decorate them up and run them around the historic district. He was on fire. He was going to fight that to his last breath. And he did. You won't see him down there either, by the way. That's the way he is. He knew what to do and what not to do. Chief brand officer, Joe Riley. So Charleston is this great American place. And people know it for this, right? They know it for what it means. And if you think about it, they took stock of all the great things. This is brand speak. I won't get into this, but this is the kind of stuff you do to uncode the DNA of a place and unpack what you are so you know what to take. The brand position and brand drivers. There's the authentic realm where you can immerse yourself in history and lifestyle. You know, it's about the brain and soul, its life lived and values set through history. You know, the real food. I mean, there's a great show that Bourdain does now on CNN. They did one on Charleston about 4 weeks ago. They caught it, really talking about this level, about the authenticity of Charleston as lived through his food. Incredible show, Anthony Bourdain. So all these things give them meaning. So here's the point. Here's the second thing. You got to go for a point of view. You got to think about who you are, which means you can't be all things to all people. But you need to be something to some people. You know, look, who are you? Look at yourself. Look at the room now. Why are you here? Why do you love this place? Who are the people, you know, very much like you, but and also coming up those Henrys that will love Blowing Rock, right? So it's really about not demographics. There's all kinds of people will say, oh, you need to be going after people of a certain a demographic that makes so much money, that have so many kids. Look, demography will never get you anywhere. What you need to worry about is psychographics. Say, Terry, what in the world is psychographics? Psychographics are those things that are our very nature, the things that we really love. Sometimes they're things that we fear, but the things that are our core being. Let me give you an example. Again, I mentioned Harley Davidson has been a client of ours since, I don't know, 15 years or so. I can get a room just like this, people who love Harley Davidson motorcycles. They can be so different. I might have one person who's an outlaw gang member with a felony rap sheet as long as your arm. I may have a lawyer making $5 million a year. I may have an 11th grade a school teacher teaching English, and she's a she, of course, it's a she. I can go to people just as different as you can imagine. And they can sit here for hours and talk about Harley Davidson motorcycles. You ask them to talk about anything else in life, and a fight's likely to break out because they don't see eye to eye on anything else. Okay? That's a psychographic. We human beings are complex. You can't buttonhole us the way demographers like to do. You have to understand the psyche of the human beings that form a particular culture or subculture. You need pagans. It's okay to have people that don't like you. Coke needs Pepsi. Okay? The Beatles needed the Rolling Stones, vice versa. Interesting, we're all that age. How many Beatles fans do we have in the room? How many Rolling Stones fans? I'm a Stones guy. Okay, very different. Some people like both, but I question whether you really do. I mean, diehards, you love one or the other. You really cars, we have a lot of car nuts that are in guys. You know, Porsche doesn't say when they bring the next model out that this is going to be better than Ferrari. You know, no, we're Porsche. You know, the red devil over there, we don't care. We're Germans. We know how to build cars. And Italians say the same thing. You know, that's what great things do. You have a point of view, right? What are you going to fight for? You couldn't take an engineer at Porsche and stick him over in Medina. It'd be like, it'd be heresy, and you'd probably be murdered in 3 days. I mean, it'd be that kind of. You just couldn't do it, right? Let's look something a little closer to home. Let's look at Asheville, North Carolina, right? Travel leisure. I thought it would have been higher, but it was 16th on their list of favorite American mountain towns. And it goes through and it waxes eloquently about all the things about Asheville, right? Okay, so another website. Look what this gentleman had to say. Coke needs Pepsi. Coke needs Pepsi. He doesn't like the fact he can walk down Asheville streets on Friday and Saturday night and get a whiff of hashish. Okay? And all the other things that go along with it. He doesn't like that. This gentleman likes, this is a very conservative website, primarily Christian in nature. So they're not going to like downtown Asheville. That's okay, you see, because we built a place just for him in Asheville. For the Cecil family, we built Biltmore Park. And he can go stay in our Hilton Hotel and enjoy restaurants, enjoy a public ground, and if he wants to, live in a house right there by, and it's not downtown Nashville. A point of view, very different. The great places have a point of view. I know there's a point of view here. I'm sure if we had time, we could sit and talk about it and you'd tell me what it is. But it's not just enough to know it. You have to act on it as a place, the same way Joe Riley did in Charleston. If you're going to have this great place, persevere into the future. Thank you.
I ask the panel members to come on up? There you go. Terry, you sit down there? Yeah. Thank you. So I'll just kind of get the ball rolling. I'm sure that the panel has a question, but the strain that I caught running through a lot of what you said, Terry, was this notion, it seemed to me, I may have misinterpreted, but the notion that the places that we tend to admire tend to be destination places that are perceived to be destination. You might say resorts, you might say destination places of pleasure, relaxation, whatever. Is that correct? Did I catch that correctly?
Well, that's true. I guess what I'm saying is turn it maybe around a little bit, is that places that are destinations, the places people love, places that are highly valued from a dollar standpoint, are places that have a particular attitude. They have a particular character. You know, you can identify 5 things that are top of mind. Everyone should go travel and leisure and see about the mountain places that people love. The top was Aspen, right? And they listed, for each one of them, they list places that are like 5 things that people really say they love about the place. Now, the funny thing is Aspen was first. There was another place in Colorado, which I didn't know, that was second, and it was a development somebody had built from scratch, which I found odd. It rose all the way up to number 2, and I got to unpack that one. I don't know why that was, but yes, the other way around.
Okay, panel, have at it. Keith, do you want to get going here?
Well,
If you better pick up your one. It's on, I think.
yeah. My take, is it on? Yeah. My take from one of the things of what you said is
I
that,
think you have to hold it.
is that you need to know who you are, what you want to be, and then you have to figure out how to get there. Where do you start with that?
That's a very good question. I think when you just started, you had this meeting. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I didn't know whether there would be 5 people here. When I look, that so many people came out. You had to brave rain, and you had to brave the construction traffic out there. Good Lord, right there's enough. To come out, you cared enough on a nighttime instead of enjoying a good meal in a restaurant, with family and friends. You hear somebody from Charlotte come up, you had no idea what he was going to say. That's a start, but you need to continue with that. I think that it all starts with dialogue. There are some tools, at that alternative planning tools. One thing about this, I do this for a living, and I have to say I'm my worst critic of my peers, and even the way I used to do it in the past. Because a lot of times you have a big public meeting, and everybody, it's not directed, conversations get to be, it's not directed. So no one gets to the point where they winnow down into those things that are truly important. Because those are the things you have to do. You do it in public meetings, you do it through websites. You really mine the social media. You really mine it nowadays. Back in the old days, we didn't have that tool. But with social media today, being mindful that sometimes comments are plants. There's a whole industry out there that tries to give false positives, you might say. And that's an art, trying to weed those things out. So you can't completely. But that's what you have to do. There's technologies too called turning technologies where you can get people together in a room like this. And it's sort of, remember you go to the optometrist, they sit there, they turn the thing in, is this better or is that better? Then they keep getting closer, right? There's technologies you can use with people to make sure everybody's voice is heard. And you can put up things just like that optometrists with those eyes. Because some people aren't ones to speak up in a group like this. So some of us are introverts, some of us are extroverts. Sometimes an introvert has something really good to say, and they don't get a chance to say it. So we have the industry, the people who focus on this know how to do this. And the difference is, a lot of times in planners in the past,
I had an old Methodist preacher tell me one time, he said, you know what, it's not about the pipes, it's about the water. You know, and I think that's a great analogy. That's what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about the water. If you don't understand the water, the pipes is irrelevant. You know, you have to get to that point. And, but you have to want to talk, have to want to engage, and you'll get to that process. You also, the reason I mentioned Joe Riley, you also need a leader. You need a leader. You need somebody who's so passionate, will stand up and raise their hand and be willing to take the slings and arrows and the abuse that will come with just standing up in the first place, because they are the people who really do love the place and are willing to do it.
Okay. That's a nice segue into my question, because Blowing Rock is such a hodgepodge. We have full-time residents, we have part-time residents, we have weekenders, we have day trippers, and then whoever else. And maybe we can be part of all of those. And it's how to allow those voices to be heard. And, oh, silly me, how could I have forgotten? Our businesses, you know, the business community, the residential folks. So what are some ways to bridge that, or to get people to be able to speak?
That's a very good question. You know, we live in a democracy that was founded in many ways on fungible real estate. You know, it's one thing, a little side note, you know, there's a great Peruvian economist, I'm having a senior moment here, I forget his name, who wrote a book talking about the greatest gift that Americans and the British made to the world was fungible real estate. That was the Japanese miracle. It wasn't transistor radios. Is the fact that after World War II, we went to Japan and gave them an American-style way to cut up all those lands and let people own it.
Did you say what kind of real estate?
Fungible. That is, it can be transferred, titles and everything. So people, of all those people you mentioned, at the top of the list, I put people who own real estate and businesses who occupy real estate.
Right.
Because those are the ones that are, better or worse, ones that at stake their livelihoods and their treasures on this place. Their customers, in many ways, are the people, the visitors, whether you come to stay, whether you just come for a day trip, or all those things. So basically, if you own real estate, you're that custodian, the way I see it. And of course, by extension, the public officials that people who own real estate essentially vote in to run it. But your custodians, all the other people are truly customers in one way or another. And that's how you make the difference. Right.
I noticed when I went online and looked you up,
Yeah.
and you had spoken at the request of the Historic Charleston Foundation,
Right.
and you spoke about the expansion of growth, development, and tourism, all things we're interested in. I went to school in Charleston, and so I'm familiar with Charleston. I'd like to know what you think, with your familiarity of Blowing Rock, what we could do to maintain the quaintness of the village and yet still encourage tourists to come.
That's a very good question. A little side about that. Reason I was asked to come down there and Mayor Riley had his finger on that, as he does everything in there, is that Charleston's about to explode. I mean, they're expecting more people all over the world to come down. You can imagine it's being seen as the East Coast tech hub now for startups. It's quite amazing. And you have a lot of people now who have bought, you know, they call them the SOB, south of Broad Street, all the mansions down there. And a lot of them aren't even inhabited anymore. People live there part of the time. And they're the ones now that are complaining about tourists. You know, I was asked before I spoke that night, I was asked by a TV station, thank goodness they didn't run it, what would I say to all those people who are complaining about the tourists south of Broad Street? I said, well, you know, Charleston's not Survivor Island. You don't get to vote people off. You know, and
They wouldn't have liked that.
no, I wouldn't. Why would they counterproductive? But the reporter got a good laugh. My point is about this, that like Charleston's in an enviable position. It will only get better with time again, if the things that are cherished, that make Charleston, Charleston, are protected with the ferocity of a tiger. If not, like a story about Joe Riley not allowing, hey, here's an idea, let's get these cars going around. Think about how many other things in that vein could happen. You have to keep the things that are important to you. That's part of that inventory. Like when I look at your downtown, I do a lot of Main Street planning. I could go through and probably, based upon a visit about 6 months ago, I could probably go through and reel off 100 things that you might want to consider not allowing, and also things that you need to encourage. Because there are certain things that the sophisticated consumer expects now in environments like that. You would cross-reference that with the things that are absolutely local, because they want that too. We crave authenticity. And after this great recession we just went through, and the advertising world in general, we start to question what really is real. What is authentic, right? So everyone's looking for that. So that's what's so great again about Charleston. When you see those ladies, weaving those baskets in that marketplace, and you know that's something that's been around for over 300 years of tradition. And then when you see that price tag that's attached to it, because it's human labor, you know it's something special. It wasn't imported from, Thailand or somewhere, right? Those are the kinds of things. Every place has the things like that. People want, when they visit a place, people want to take back a token of that, of where they've been. Something to help keep that memory warm. Something they can put on, something they can hold. The odd thing is about Main Street too, that people also do a lot of their shopping now on when they go on vacation. And the odd thing there is they still shop the brands they want. I mean, you can go to Monaco, and one of the best stores there is a Ralph Lauren polo shirt. People come from America to go to Monaco to stock up on polo shirts by Ralph Lauren. That's a great contradiction about human beings too, right? So a great place, a great Main Street has the kind of shopping that people might do with the brands they want, but also the things that are unique. The biggest thing though, that kind of play in with it, the thing that really concerns me the most, and that's why I was talking about urbanism. One of the places that has made a big impression upon me that I think should be a model perhaps for Blowing Rock, in general, is the Lake District in the UK. And one little town I think in particular is they pronounce it Keswick, I think, but we would say Keswick. But the idea when you're in the Lake District, you can almost draw a line around the built environment in the Lake District. You can walk 50 feet and be in wilderness, just like I was talking about Beaver Creek. And my concern is that Greater Blowing Rock gets to the point that everybody wants their little piece of paradise and nobody gets any paradise. And that growth boundaries and making sure that you have shards of wilderness that come into Blowing Rock are protected as much as that Blue Ridge Parkway is protected. Maybe even more so, frankly. That you have trails that if you're 80 and you can only walk a quarter of a mile, there's a real, viable quarter of a mile walk. If you're 28 and you can almost do the Appalachian Trail in 3 days, well, we got you a long trail you can walk too, and everything in between. That's what's important as you go forward, is make sure you don't lose that dichotomy, because that's what's going to make you as valuable as any. That's when you'll be, 18 on Travel and Leisure's list of the best mountain destinations.
Thank you.
And that's a good lead into one of my concerns, that we spend a lot of time here worrying about the village. Do we grow it? Do we let it grow? Or do we maintain what we've got and push growth away? I think what I hear you saying is that one of the, and I think this is true, that a primary reason people come here is the wilderness, what's around us. So it leads me to question then, how much do we protect the village versus growing it to accommodate more people who come to see the wilderness. And if I might say, part of the problem you have with Blowing Rock is we have our accommodations, our motels, this place being an exception, but they tend to be older. And so if you're going to accommodate people who come to go to the wilderness to see what's out there, perhaps you need to grow the hotel environment, bring more people to stay here as opposed to going to Boone or someplace else and driving in. The flip side of that is that you protect the village at all costs and make it a destination for those people. In that case, you probably lose the overnighters to the area.
I'm not sure about that aspect, but I do think this. I think that it's a balance. I think there is when I look at the village, there's a lot of developed land here. And with that means there's a lot of potential for redevelopment once the value is set. But when you start having growth boundaries, some people think, oh, it's anti-American, growth, not land, don't build anything I want on it, the libertine attitude. But I think that's what kills places. So I think it's first taking, you got to take stock of the natural areas that are here, the ones that ought to have almost that national park status, right? And you draw boundaries, you start that process. And then you say, we want to have the best mountain village anywhere in the world, right? And there's examples, not just in America, you can look at that. And what that means is, I did talk about this, what it means is that it's highly walkable. Generally you find in villages, people don't walk, a village ought to be like a quarter of a mile. It's a quarter of a mile radius from whatever you want to determine the centroid is. And within that zone, it's where you focus and say, growth happens here. Because, it's all about the fourth dimension of time anyway. That's what we're talking about. And that I would say, my own personal belief is, just looking at it, that you could take in the village, you could increase, growth by even 100% under a certain plan and still have that quaint, highly valued village, even more so than you have now. But that's where you draw the line. That's what I was talking about Keswick, as they say it, is that when you have both of those, your real estate in that village will go up. Now, obviously, there'll be certain people say, I don't get it. I own land out here on the edge of civilization, and I want to build the next 7-Eleven, because I can, right? That's what you have to say, no. Portland as a city is a good example of that. They drew hard and fast boundaries. There's a lot of difference, a lot of zeros after Portland in terms of people and everything else you don't have here, but the principle is the same. You have to decide what's valuable, what do you want to take forward with you into the future? What do you want to leave your kids and grandkids, in terms of this place? Hard choices, no doubt.
I think that's the really crux of this, of what do we want to leave for our children and our grandchildren. And I don't think it's a building. I personally think it's green space and walkable things.
And I would just say, because if they will live in that, there'll be an environment in buildings, and that environment, those buildings, that needs to be the best they can be.
Absolutely.
Both of them.
If we could visualize our little village downtown, and we could see ourselves walking a quarter of a mile, one way, a quarter of a mile, 4 ways, so to speak, a square mile, I guess is what I heard you say, from the center of town. And if we were to really preserve walking spaces, to it, I guess, hiking spaces. And I heard you say, I thought, that you thought, just off the top of your head, that we could actually get 100% more density into that little village and make it dramatically more authentic and valuable. That's what I thought I heard.
Yes, I think you can. That's why I brought up the seaside model. I mean, if you look at it from a metric, say, of what we architects would call the FAR, the floor area ratio. You have to get a master's degree to use that term. I'm laughing at myself. But it's basically the volume that's in the building some of the most beautiful places. Like, for example, some of the places we all spend, thousands of dollars to hop on airplanes and go to see in Europe. If you would do that kind of clinical analysis of some of the best little villages that we love, and you compare it to Blowing Rock, it's probably 3 times that in terms of density, right? And Charleston itself, look at Charleston, my goodness gracious, Charleston is so dense. If you take the whole of downtown Charleston and you compare a similar kind of area downtown Charlotte, I haven't done the math, I'd wager it probably equals that, even though Charlotte's got the high-rise buildings, you see. So I mean, there's some beauty that could come with it. But the question is the quality of it. What is the quality? What is this DNA of Blowing Rock that needs to go forward that directs your buildings? There's a thing called form-based codes out there. And it's here's another kind of wonkish terms. We've grown up since the 1940s with zoning that's called Euclidean codes. And it's not named after some ancient Greek in a toga, but it's named after Euclid, Ohio, was the first landmark case about zoning, as we know, in Allwood Supreme Court, that said, yes, we can zone land, basically. And we can put, all of the poor people here, and all the middle people here, and all the rich people here, and the factories, all the stuff. We started separating everything out like a kid might do his vegetables on a plate. And we learned things from that if you just go by the numbers, you don't get something we all value. It's called beauty. Form-based codes are first talks about what is the place we want, how can we use concepts of beauty in our place to help guide how we build buildings. Radically different way. It's sweeping the country, form-based codes. I'm a great proponent of it, and I believe that's ultimately what you'll need in Blowing Rock. But yes, another thing about walkability, it's not just the distance, it's also the quality of that walk. Because when you do buildings and things that are interesting along the street, try it out yourself. Walk a 2 blocks of your main street when all the restaurants are going, right, on that side of the street, and kind of pace it off. And go to that Tanger outlet thing out here and walk on the edge of that parking lot and see how bored you are. Okay? It's the quality of the walk. Okay, and that has many, many dimensions.
I want to relate something, as most of you know, Danielle has a shop downtown, so we are business oriented, but we also live there and we are resident oriented. And I, from time to time, go into the shop to help Danielle out, to be her gopher. And I was there today, and a lady came in and started a conversation, and she said, I once lived in Laguna Beach, California, and I loved it out there. Beautiful place, fabulous. And she said, now I live in Greenville, South Carolina, and I absolutely love it. It is a beautiful place. But now I'm here in Blowing Rock. He said, this place speaks to your soul. So my question to you is, maybe this will help us wrap it up tight together, but what are 2 or 3 things, primary things that we ought to be about in Blowing Rock now to make sure that when that lady comes back to Blowing Rock 10 years from now, she says the same thing?
Well, I like that about Greenville. A little thing about that. Now, maybe the gentleman back think that's a bad thing too, but I in 1979, my partner and I recently passed away, Ron Morgan in Charlotte, did the first master plan for the Reedy River Greenway down there, which at the time was a river with like a sewer, shopping carts in it and everything else, and that's what helped kick off that renaissance down in Greenville. The things that really focus, I think it's even what the gentleman was saying, like, go back to what I said, you got to determine what it is, the most important you want to keep. I believe is actually, as I said, development controls. You can't die the death of 1,000 cuts, and everybody wants to build their own little piece of paradise to keep approaching into the green spaces left. You have to be real serious about that. You have to limit the areas in which people will develop. And yes, houses get torn down, things get built back. As long as it's done in a way that protects the integrity of Blowing Rock as you will define it, then life can happen. And yes, things can get denser in the downtown and still maintain that quaint village. But you gotta determine through form-based codes, I think, what quaint means within the vernacular, specific vernacular of Blowing Rock. Because like I said, you know, people can stick their head in the sand, America is growing, population is increasing, the East Coast in particular. You saw those red dots on that map. So if you don't decide you're going to lead, you will be a victim. I don't think anybody in this room wants to be a victim of that. So that's basically, you know, I start with the land. I start with the land, and you back into everything else.
Well, Terry, thank you, thank you. Really superb. Thank you so very much. And thank all of you for coming. And thank our panel. Thank you very much. Drive safely.